What's going on? It is Coach AJ Lew. Welcome to the next lesson. We have covered a lot, man. I mean, up to this point, you've already learned a ton. I'm hoping that you've already got tremendous value out of this already, and we're just kind of getting started. And so at this point, like if we look at the sales cycle, right? So you got from first contact all the way through to the close, and then you got the post-close follow-up, and then you got getting referrals and delivering, and that whole process after you've, from getting the customer to keeping the customer. And so when we look at the sales process, you got kind of like the very first thing is preparing, right? And then from preparing, then it's getting yourself into state, and then it's making contact, and then it's getting the customer interested. And so right now we've done those things. Now what's the next step? So now that the customer's interested, you've done those things, you're in rapport, you got great chemistry, you're on the same frequency, all those things. Now what? Okay. So the now what is, now we're going to get into what we call qualifying, right? And qualifying is really just making sure that this is in the best interest of your customer and that your customer can afford to, whatever the price may be, whether it's money, time, energy, effort, whatever the price is, that making sure that your customer can afford whatever it is that you're pitching to them, right? And so we're going to talk about qualifying, and there's really a few things that you need to know, right? There's not a billion things you need to know to qualify people, but these are the things that you have to know. First and foremost, you got to know what their needs are. You have to know what they need. And so when we talk about what they need, sometimes, it's not just the obvious, right? So you might know that a company needs more customers, right? But they might also need, customers that can pay cash, right? Or they might also need constant communication, right? They're going to judge you on how well you're doing your job by how often they speak to you. So if they only speak to you once a week, then you're not fulfilling their needs, right? So you got to understand their needs. Next thing, you got to understand their wants, right? How do they want to be talked to? How do they want to be perceived? What are the things that they desire, right? So you got to know their wants. You got to know their pain points. So remember we talked about what the sales process is, finding a deep hurt, like a pain, right? Then finding wants and needs, and then healing their pain with the solution. So if that's kind of the three elements of the sales cycle or the persuasion cycle, right? Well, you have to find the pain points. So you got to ask people what's happened in the past, why haven't things worked out? What's the number one reason why you aren't where you want to be? You got to dig into that pain, because that pain is what's going to help you turn that person, get them over. See the bridge in the background? That's what's going to help you get them onto the other side of the bridge, is the pain. You got to know if they're the decision maker. I can't tell you how many times, countless numbers of times, myself, my colleagues, my different people that I've worked with, everything, we've wasted so much time because we're pitching to the wrong person. We're trying to convince someone of something that can't make a decision, that can't make the decision. And so we wasted all this time, all this energy, everything. We wasted all of this and it was never going to happen because this person wasn't even the decision maker. And then the last one is money, right? If money's involved, do they have enough money to get what it is that you're selling, right? That's another thing that salespeople do all the time. They'll go through a whole sales presentation. I've been at car dealerships looking at like whatever $200,000 cars, and these people try to go through a whole sales presentation. I'm like, you just wasted your time, man. I'm not to that point where I can buy a $200,000 car yet, right? So you need to be able to qualify these things, right? I'm going to give you a couple tips to do this, but I want you to be creative. I want you to get some of this done on your own. So needs should be simple, right? What do you need? What are the primary things that you need for your business to succeed? What are the primary things you need in order to feel like you were doing a great job? Just ask some questions, right? So you got to come up with 3 questions to find out their needs. What are 3 questions you can ask to find out their wants? Now, pain points. A good way to find out pain points is to ask, how are things now? And then how do you wish they were, right? Or asking, how do you wish things were? And then bringing them back to, how are things now? And this is powerful. And you see this with coaches and people that are selling high ticket items. What they'll ask is, if we were to sit down a year from now and everything went well and everything went perfectly, and we were sitting down, what would have happened in the past year to make you extremely happy to say that this was a 10 out of 10 in terms of your satisfaction? And the person will say, oh, well, this would happen and I would feel like this and that would happen. And then you want to dig deeper into that. So you'd feel like this, what would feeling like this do for you? Right. And then they'll tell you that, and you say, okay. And so, well, with that, let me start over. Sometimes I'm that visual person, right? I can just get going. So here, okay. So I'm speaking to you, and I'm interviewing, or I'm not interviewing you, but I'm sitting down in a sales meeting, which is like an interview, right? Um, and I ask you, okay, if we're sitting down a year from now, what would have happened for you to say that this was the best product you've ever purchased in your life? And you'll say, well, I'd be able to persuade anyone, man. I'd be able to have the confidence when I walk into a room to know that I'm going to have a shot at the business. I'd be able to read people. I'd be able to do all these things. And I'd say, okay, so being able to do all those things and read people and persuade people and sell to people and all those things, what are those really going to do for you? And you would say something like, man, it's going to help me make more money, and it's going to help me, you know, just live a better life. Okay. And what would making more money and living a better life do for you? Man, it would just make me feel like I did what I was capable of doing. Right. It would make me feel like I took care of business, and I reached my goals. And so that's the real reason, right? So you got to dig into that. And then I would go next. The next question I would ask you, it would be something like, okay, so why aren't you there yet? Why aren't you there now? Right. And that's the pain. That's where the pain comes in. And you might say something like, well, I've read some books and I've done some things, but I just never really put in the time and effort, and, da, 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 da. And I'd be like, okay, so what does that cost you? Right? What is not putting in the time, energy, and effort cost you? You'd be like, man, I've never even thought about it. It cost me this and that and this. Okay. And by costing you that, what does it really cost you? I mean, and then you say something like, to be honest, man, I don't really believe in myself, right? I don't know if I can do it. It's a struggle, da, 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 da. And you start getting down into the real pain, the real insecurities, the real reasons. And the only way to get there is through asking questions and finding these things out. Okay. So become a great question asker. Um, and then, in terms of finding out if they're the decision maker, you don't want to be rude. It can be perceived a little rude if you say, are you the decision maker? Right. So what you can say instead is like, so let me ask you this. If everything makes sense and you decide that this is going to be the way that you want to go, is there anyone else that needs to be involved in this decision other than yourself in order for us to move forward? Right. And so you get that straight to the point, like, is there anyone else that needs to be involved in this decision for us to move forward? And if they say no, then at the end, when you go to close, if they say, oh, I got to talk to this person, then they just lied to you, right? That means they just lied to you. And then you have that in your tool bag as to like, well, I know that when we talked, I did ask you that if you were the only person that needed to be involved in this decision. So can I ask you what the real reason is you're not moving forward? Right? See the power in that. Okay. And then in terms of money, you gotta be creative with this one, right? Because you can't some people will be direct and just tell you, hey, so how much you looking to invest in the market today? But other times, man, you can't be that direct. So you got to find some creative ways to do it for your industry. To be honest, I ask customers a lot. So what's your budget? What's your marketing budget? Or, what are your goals? How much is a customer worth to you? If we were to bring you one lead, what's that lead worth to you? What's the lifetime value, right? How often do customers come back? How often are they? So then when we go through all these questions and we start talking about numbers and financials, then when I can throw out, hey, okay, so what's your marketing budget? Now they're going to be more upfront and honest with me with their budget, because we've kind of gotten to the point where we're talking numbers. We're getting some of that money conversation out there, right? So your homework for today is write down 3 questions for each of these. So needs, wants, pain points, asking if they're the decision makers, and finding out if they have the money to pay you, right? To pay for whatever it is that you're offering. So those are the number one, things that you need to know in terms of if a person's qualified. And without knowing if they're qualified, you can waste a lot of time. You can waste a lot of breath and a lot of energy and effort and everything else, man. So it's not worth it. It is worth becoming a great qualifier. So hope you enjoyed the lesson. And man, I just want to keep giving you value. And hopefully these things are things that are helping you become better, helping you to grow and learn and become the best version of yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.